There's not a police force in the country, with the possible exception of Gotham City, who can provide the physical infrastructure needed in a situation like this. Not one. And certainly not LA, and certainly not these smaller communities around LA. Governor Newsom and all the mayors should be thanking the federal government and the National Guard for trying to provide the infrastructure that the police force can't do. And the police force went from saying, oh, these are peaceful protests, we got it handled on Friday, to yesterday saying, this is a big problem, we can't handle it. You know why they can't handle it? No one can. Sorry, go ahead.
But there's one other small point that's not getting coverage, and I hope that the Trump administration makes it. If this was a riot in any city and local law enforcement couldn't hold it back and Donald Trump said, well, screw it, you can't handle it, I'm going to take care of it, I would still argue that at the end of the day, it is the job of a government official to protect the citizens of its people. And if somebody won't do it, then somebody else should. But in this case, there's a nuance. And the nuance is this. There are people attacking federal agents at a facility, and the federal government has a right to protect itself and its assets. And this is something that is not being brought up.
100%.
The Trump administration isn't going there because they have an absolute 100. And frankly, if the local police and state officials won't defend the federal government, then it would be malpractice for Donald Trump, the federal government.
And that is where, Sean, I think that they are sending a signal to other cities.
As they should.
That's what I was just going to say, because increasingly, and look, I watch conservative media, I watch liberal media because I want to try to see what's going on. In the last few weeks, conservative media has been picking up some of the kind of friction that's being put in place in front of ICE agents all over the country, primarily in blue cities, trying to do their job, right? Hasn't reached this level, but it's been kind of inching up with confrontation. And I think, to your point, Mark, they are saying we are drawing the line. Like, this has got to stop. You have to let them do their job. If this starts to get physical, as you say, we have a duty to protect them as they should.
Trump doesn't have the right to do it. He has the obligation. For the families of these ICE agents expect their loved ones to be protected. And I don't often say shoe is on the other foot, but imagine if Barack Obama was doing something with federal officials and right-wing protesters started to attack them. Imagine what the coverage would be like. I've seen a lot of coverage in the last couple of days in the dominant media, both LA local and national. I've not seen a single mention of the danger to our civic society and law and order, not one mention of the attacks on federal law enforcement officials doing not just their job, but what President Trump has made central to his campaign for a decade, and they can say, well, this is about tear gassing a 4-year-old in a stroller. Take your daughter home.
Yeah.
If there's tear gas. This is not a joke. This is not a political drama. This is the federal government trying to restore order to the United States by fulfilling a campaign promise regarding people in this country illegally, both people who committed crimes only when they came here and people who've committed serious or non-serious crimes since they've come here. But this coverage is a joke. It is a joke.
And let's also not forget that it started to look a little reminiscent of Portland during the George Floyd stuff. Cities got out of control, and Democrats thought, because the protests are a good cause, that it's good trouble, it's okay. The rest of the country was horrified at this. So for us to go down this road again is political insanity.
Thank you. I mean, that's why I keep saying the policy and the politics don't always, sync up, but this time they are. And I cannot believe, for everything that's happened, the default of the Democrats is to side with the people breaking the law and in the country illegally. But I will say, just as a side note, you played in the clip, we heard Tom Homan a moment ago. Keep in mind, they've made it clear over and over again, if we go after a bad guy and we open the door and there's 5 people here who are here illegally, we cannot and we will not just allow them to stay. Yeah. And that's frankly, and what people go, is because can you imagine if they let 4 people stay and 2 of them in 5 years commit? I mean, look at what the guy in Colorado. One of the big issues is he was allowed to stay. He didn't have a record at the time, but Biden didn't do his job. and that we paid the consequences. And there are multiple people still in the hospital because of that. So the Trump administration has an obligation to make sure that in the process, just the same way if a police, if they come to a house and they see something and there's a bunch of guns or drugs, they got to go, hey, we're arresting everybody because you all broke the law. That might not be when they showed up. But if you're in this country illegally, you have been warned. You've been given an opportunity to leave, and maybe you've been able to skate by under Joe Biden. But the bottom line is time is up, and you know it. And if you don't want to go, then you're going to get a free ride out.
Right. All right. Let me show you some elements about first the Democrats and then the press, and say again how they use the National Guard should be scrutinized, their policies, who they're deporting, what kind of process they're using to deport people. Whether this is somehow political, all of that requires extraordinary scrutiny. But that can be done at the same time that the press and the Democrats acknowledge that it is madness to say that federal law enforcement officials doing their job should be subject to violent attacks, and that if they defend themselves and fight back, that somehow they're causing it. Here is Judd Legum, very smart guy, writes a popular newsletter from the left. Here's number 110. This is what Judd Legum wrote in his Substack today. Although any violence and property destruction is a serious matter, local law enforcement appears fully capable of responding to the situation. No, they don't, and they acknowledge that they don't.
By the way, everyone on the left used to lie without evidence. Like, for all the times that I've heard that phrase come my way, to say that, and you're absolutely, Mark, you're right on the analysis of local, with the exception of the New York City Police Department, there is no one else that can handle it. They can't, and they finally
can't. They can't. So, they can't. They shouldn't be suing the president for activating the National Guard. They should be thanking him.
Because the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that